Get Smart became one of the most popular television shows ever. We paid the tax. The Prime Minister only needs to be unchained and removed from this place. Correct. In addition to other cuts that were left out and never watched by viewers, there is an episode of Get Smart that virtually no one saw. Despite being produced in 1965, it was never broadcast on television. The footage stood out from the rest and was so funny that it could have caused problems. Normally, the show's humorous spy stories made viewers chuckle, but this one went too far. Before anyone could see, the TV station's bosses made the decision to end it. People continue to question what made it so unique. Let's examine this hidden and overlooked aspect of Get Smart. Not the bunny slippers, oops. Get Smart has a unique place in the comedy industry among all the iconic TV series from the 1960s. One of the most endearing yet naive secret agents to ever appear on cinema, Maxwell Smart was bright, absurd, and full of comedic humor. Surprisingly, though, even a comedy as lighthearted and humorous as Get Smart had its share of controversy. I'm not talking about a major or career-ending issue here. No. The topic we are delving into is so unimportant that it nearly seems made up. One episode, more precisely, a scene was cancelled because it was deemed excessive. You might simply roll your eyes and question why it was such a huge deal when you hear what it was. This is what transpired. During the second season of the show, there was a brief scene in which Max enters control headquarters while sporting an absurd pair of bunny slippers. Indeed. Bunny slippers. That was it. Everyone looks at him and tries not to chuckle as he walks with all seriousness. It was a quintessential Maxwell Smart joke. Complete sincerity in the most ridiculous circumstance. The beauty of it was that the slippers were never described or mentioned again. It was purely comedic. The scene was filmed and even appeared in the episode's initial cut. However, it appears that someone at the network decided it was too ridiculous and removed the segment right before it aired. Yes, exactly. The bunny slippers were considered a step too far on a show that is known for its cone of silence pranks and exploding cell phones. Let's pause now and give that some serious thought. For a show that once had an invisible dog and a monster called the Craw, bunny slippers were too much. This was the same show where Max would use a shoe phone to deliver catchphrases like "Would you believe?" while covert operatives concealed in vending machines. However, a pair of fluffy slippers perhaps went too far. This is where things start to get a little out of hand. Fans were never given an explanation. Nothing to say. No commentary on the DVD behind the scenes. Nothing. The scene was simply taken out and forgotten. However, die-hard fans? Yes, they did notice. For years, there were rumors. Those who saw the initial promotional stills recalled seeing it. Some even claimed to have seen the slippers in practice or early broadcast video. The too hot for TV bunny slippers become a sort of silly urban legend on television. There were little arguments among fans over the controversy, if you can call it that. Was the cut warranted? Was the humorous rhythm ruined by the scene? Or was an innocent joke making the network too stiff? Some claimed that Max Smart was always goofy but never stupid, and that the joke destroyed the show's world. Others believed that the silliness of the character and the entire play was well encapsulated by the image of him entering in bunny slippers. To be honest, it would be a stretch to suggest that the scenario would have altered the history of television. However, it still captures a humorous and sometimes annoying aspect of TV censorship at the time. The 1960s were a time when comedy shows were still figuring out what was appropriate and what would be considered excessive. We all missed out on what might have been one of the most absurd sight gags in the history of the show because the shoes were cut. A prime example of how even the smallest choices in entertainment can have the greatest effects is the notorious bunny slipper cut from Get Smart. Even though it was a fleeting jest, a blink and you miss it moment, it turned into a tiny representation of artistic limitations. It wasn't harmful. It was amusing. However, someone refused. Perhaps that's why devoted fans find it so annoying. Get Smart was built on the bizarre and the unexpected, not because the joke would have made or broke the program. It feels like you're missing the whole point when you cut a gag because it's too ridiculous. After all these years, we are still discussing bunny slippers, and perhaps that is the true joke. And it didn't end there. Other clips that would have been as noteworthy and humorous as the well-known favorites were omitted. There were more gags that failed. It wasn't the only instance. That ended up on the floor of the cutting room. A scene in which Max unintentionally spills hot coffee on the chief was another cut that was discussed. The chief tried to keep his cool in front of a foreign dignitary who was visiting, but the physical gag ended with him silently screaming in agony. According to reports, the audience laughed so much during the taping that it disrupted the following lines. Why was this scene trimmed? Evidently, it gave the impression that the CEO was too weak and uninspiring. The network chose to cut it because they believed it could damage Control's leadership style. Ignore the chief's habit of getting confined in closets, getting blown up by gadgets, and even dressing up as a cocktail waitress. They said that the coffee scene was only a minute too far. The notorious rubber chicken incident followed. Indeed, Max was meant to deploy a rubber chicken as a diversionary weapon during a mission in one of the staged scenes. In order to divert attention as 99 sneaked into a chaotic office, the chicken was set up to squawk and burst into confetti when thrown. Even Don Adams allegedly adored the scene, which performed flawlessly during rehearsals. However, the studio officials believed it would make the show appear juvenile and was too slapstick. Too slapstick? That's like saying a banana is too yellow on Get Smart. The scene was discarded in favor of a more somber device that nobody can recall. Since learning about the chicken in behind-the-scenes reports, fans have harbored resentment for it. Then comes the most odd cut of all, a whole scene in which Max and 99 unintentionally become trapped in a broken cone of silence and begin making private admissions. They were intended to have a rare moment of emotional candor. Actually, it offered the characters a little more depth and suggested deeper emotions. However, producers felt it made the program feel too romantic for a spy comedy, so it was removed. The strange thing is that viewers have always yearned for more poignant scenes with Max and 99. The appeal of the play was partly due to their chemistry. Cone of Silence Confessional might have gained popularity. Rather, it was buried and completely absent from the show. In the grand picture of television history, these minor cuts, the slippers, the coffee spill, the chicken, and the confessions may seem insignificant. However, these wasted moments were significant in a program like Get Smart, where the delicate balance between intelligence and ridiculousness was crucial. They demonstrated how tone and image were still being policed for even the most ridiculous of comedies. The majority of sitcoms and comic shows are still written and not entirely impromptu, it's safe to assume. The show's lost episodes and snippets are still an oddity in television history. Despite never airing, it serves as a reminder that even the most hilarious shows have their limitations. Who knows? Perhaps one day it will be seen for what it truly is. It remains in Get Smart's confidential files till then. Get wits and laughs. During a golden age of television, the American television series Get Smart debuted in 1965 and immediately became one of the most recognizable and inventive comedies of its era. The show was designed as a sarcastic response to the surge in popularity of spy fiction following the James Bond film series. It was created by Mel Brooks and Buck Henry. Get Smart was released at the ideal moment, when the American public was fascinated by and afraid of espionage due to the high levels of Cold War tensions. The creators provided viewers with a lighthearted and novel perspective on international espionage and clandestine intelligence operations by introducing humor into this otherwise somber genre. Originally created for ABC, the show was later acquired by NBC after ABC declined to move further with it. The main character of the show was Maxwell Smart, a clumsy but strangely successful secret spy known as Agent 86. Don Adams played the part with a memorable mix of physical comedy and deadpan humor. Smart was employed by Control, a fictional American espionage agency that was constantly at war with Chaos, a sinister group determined to dominate the globe. Barbara Feldon's character, Agent 99, who was not only smart and capable but also deviated from the usual female characters in spy thrillers of the day, frequently assisted Smart. 99 was a memorable character because of her humor, intelligence, and ability to consistently save Smart from himself as he regularly tripped over his own feet due to incompetence or overconfidence. A number of important elements contributed to Get Smart's success. First and foremost, the writing was incredibly incisive, skillfully fusing political satire, slapstick, absurdist humor, and wordplay in a style that was both witty and approachable. The series' catchphrases, like "Would you believe" and "Missed it by that much," became widely used and strengthened the program's place in popular culture. The show's distinctive devices, such as the well-known shoe phone, became iconic representations of the series, capturing the inventiveness of the show's producers as well as the technological curiosity of the 1960s. Because these gadgets were frequently oversized replicas of actual spy gear, the program was able to balance homage and mockery. Another important factor in the show's ongoing appeal was the casting. Don Adams served as the series' focal point, while Maxwell Smart was a unique character thanks to his flawless timing, perfect delivery, and distinctive voice. Equally important was Barbara Feldman's performance, which counterbalanced Adams' erratic energy and gave a rare example of a respected and talented woman in a leading television role at the time. The ensemble dynamic was enhanced by Edward Platt's aristocratic demeanor and dry humor, which served as a stable counterweight to Smart's antics in his role as chief of control. Despite the show's frequently fantastical situations, the chemistry between these main performers was evident, and their performances contributed to creating a compelling and convincing reality. Get Smart was highly praised by critics and won multiple awards during its run. It received many Emmy Awards, including one for Best Comedy Series and another for Best Actor in a Comedy Series for Don Adams. Additionally, the show's early seasons saw consistently good ratings, which aided in its expansion beyond television into comic books, merchandise, and eventually feature films. Its combination of witty prose, visual humor, and endearing characters helped establish the spy spoof as a unique subgenre of comedy and influenced innumerable later comedy shows. But like many long-running TV shows, Get Smart eventually ran into problems that caused it to wane and end. From 1965 until 1970, the series lasted for 5 seasons. CBS aired the final season, while NBC aired the first 4. The later episodes found it difficult to retain the same degree of innovation and viewer engagement as the early seasons, which were characterized by high creative standards. Growing competition from newer series and shifting viewer preferences, which started to prioritize more socially conscious programming over frivolous escapism, were 2 contributing factors. Furthermore, some viewers started to find the show's premise repetitive, and even the gifted writers and performers struggled to regularly come up with new ideas inside the series' strict framework. The series' attempt to change its major characters and plots in order to keep viewers interested marked yet another important turning point. Agents 86 and 99's marriage and the arrival of their twins in subsequent episodes were attempts to change the plot and give the program a fresh lease on life. However, a lot of viewers and reviewers saw these changes as a shift from the series' initial tone and purpose. Budgetary restrictions and production modifications brought about by CBS's decision to take over the last season also had an impact on the overall caliber and consistency of the program. Despite these difficulties, Get Smart's legacy endures. The show was brought back to life several times in different formats, including a brief follow-up series in 1995 and a big-budget movie adaptation in 2008 with Anne Hathaway and Steve Carell. Get Smart established a model for combining satire and action with a strong comic sensibility, and its influence can still be observed in modern comedies and espionage parodies. It also paved the path for future television programs that embraced self-aware comedy and merged genres. Even while Get Smart received a lot of positive reviews and even won multiple Emmys, it was not without its detractors, some of which have only grown more noticeable over time. Let's examine a few of them. A closer examination. Get Smart was an instant hit when movie came out because it was a new and sarcastic spoof of the spy genre, especially James Bond-style clichés. Don Adams played the foolish secret agent Maxwell Smart in the comedy series, which was created by comic veterans Mel Brooks and Buck Henry and became a mainstay of American television comedy. Even during the show's initial run, its reliance on formulaic humor and recurring gags was one of the most often voiced grievances. Catchphrases formed a large part of Get Smart's humorous framework. Do you think that's possible? Misunderstandings that are predictable and slapstick. Although endearing at first, some reviewers and viewers felt that the humor eventually became stale. The parody's novelty had worn off by the later seasons, and the jokes were cliched. Its one strong point of witty spy satire frequently gives way to forced or uninspired stupidity. In other words, rather of developing, the show occasionally relied too much on its most well-known elements and coasted on its prior success. Similarly, Get Smart suffered from erratic character development and narrative. Naturally, Maxwell Smart was intended to be a spoof. An incompetent spy with good intentions who consistently tripped into success. However, this lack of real development or intricacy annoyed some viewers. Barbara Feldon's portrayal of Agent 999, who was intelligent and elegant, frequently gave the impression that she was more capable than Max. Despite this, she was rarely given the same humorous weight or narrative emphasis. The show's tendency to simplify its characters to caricatures was noted by critics. Amusing? Indeed, but it's flat. This eventually caused the series to feel more static than dynamic. The show's portrayal of gender and race has also been a topic of discussion, particularly in more recent reassessments. Despite being an educated, accomplished woman in a male-dominated spy business, Agent 990 was progressive for the time, yet she nevertheless took a backseat to Max. Her position as a spy was overshadowed by her eventual marriage to Max and her life as a mother, and she seldom ever received recognition for her accomplishments. In the meanwhile, there were very few characters of race in the predominantly white series. Additionally, other ethnic groups frequently played token or stereotyped parts when they did appear. Even while these issues are indicative of the time period in which the show was produced, they are nonetheless noticeable from a modern perspective. There was also occasional criticism of the show's tempo and tone. It wasn't always easy to combine satire, spy action, and humor. Some episodes were padded with lengthy chase scenes or complicated gadget setups, or they were filled with gags that didn't work. This inconsistency caused a gap between the show's brilliant idea and how it was really carried out. Get Smart might come across as lighthearted or even childish to viewers who were more interested in precisely crafted comedy like The Dick Van Dyke Show or the subsequent social criticism of All in the Family. Finally, a more general critique of Get Smart focuses on its shallow emotional content. The best sitcoms of the time at least showed moments of vulnerability or humanity, even though many of them weren't very contemplative. Conversely, Get Smart remains solidly within the domain of farce. This seemed emotionally empty to some viewers. How long, after all, can you watch a character struggle through peril without ever truly evolving or thinking about anything? Because there were no real stakes, it occasionally felt like a cartoon, amusing but unresonant. Ultimately, Get Smart is still considered a classic for its era, and it has had an indisputable impact on the comedy and spy spoof genres. It wasn't flawless, though, like any aspect of popular culture. It was open to criticism because of its excessive dependence on formula, constrained character arcs, cultural blind spots, and occasionally sloppy execution. These shortcomings complicate the nostalgic aura that frequently envelopes the play, but they do not necessarily diminish its worth. These critiques provide crucial background information for audiences who are rewatching the film now or who are seeing it for the first time, positioning Get Smart as a work of both genius and restriction due to the cast and returning visitors. Let's discuss who they were in those days, their roles, and their subsequent lives once the spotlight faded. Casts both now and back then. It became a television classic thanks to its memorable characters, funny jokes, and deft writing. The cast, however, was what really made the play stand out. With their charisma and impeccable comedic timing, these actors vividly portrayed the world of chaos and control. Don Adams, who portrayed Agent 86, better known as Maxwell Smart, was at the heart of the mayhem. With his deadpan tone and amusing catchphrases like, "Missed it by that much," and "Would you believe Smart was a bumbling secret agent who always somehow managed to get the job done, usually by accident," he was the show's main attraction. It became Don Adams' legacy because he played the part so well. In fact, it earned him 3 Emmys. He continued to play the role in a few films after Get Smart, and he also provided the voice of Inspector Gadget, another well-known awkward investigator. Don died in February 2005, yet because of this portrayal, he is still remembered as a television icon. Next up is Barbara Feldon, who portrayed Maxwell Smart's partner and then wife, Agent 99. She was intelligent, sophisticated, capable, and frequently prevented Max from making mistakes of his own. Being one of the few strong and capable female protagonists on television in the 1960s was what set her apart. She maintained her humorous edge while adding sophistication and intelligence to the presentation. Barbara kept acting after becoming well known for her roles in television shows and films, but she gradually moved out of the spotlight. She concentrated more on writing and personal projects in her final years. Fans of the show still have positive memories of her, and she published a book titled Living Alone and Loving It. Edward Platt portrayed the head of control and the long-suffering boss. While Max caused chaos all around him, he was constantly attempting to maintain order. His serious manner and harsh voice were the ideal counterpoint to Max and the others' foolishness. Despite enduring the most absurd circumstances, Edward Platt provided the chief a sense of respect. Prior to Get Smart, he had a successful acting career, but this part stands out as his most memorable. Regretfully, he died in 1974, a few years after the conclusion of the first series. Siegfried, played by Bernie Koppel, was a comically malevolent chaos agent with a thick accent who had a way of ruining his own schemes. One of the most adored antagonists in television humor is Siegfried. Bernie loved the part so much that he came back for the reunion films. He continued to appear on television after Get Smart, most notably as Dr. Bricker on The Love Boat. Additionally, he appeared as a guest on Charmed, Scrubs, and Monk. He is still going strong now, and his admirers still enjoy his work. Dick Gautier, who portrayed Hemi the robot, came next. A humanoid robot named Hemi joined control and immediately won over fans with his rigid stance, literal-minded reactions, and unexpected emotional outbursts. A role who may have been icy and robotic was given a great deal of warmth and charm by Gautier. Following Get Smart, he went on to voice characters in animated series and make appearances in a number of movies and TV shows. Even though he died away in February 2017, people continue to grin when they think of Jamie. One of the most naive control agents, Larrabee, was portrayed by Robert Karvlas, who was actually Don Adams' cousin in real life. Larrabee was devoted and kind, but incredibly stupid. His scenes added even more humor to the show and were always a joy. Outside of Get Smart, Karvlas didn't do much acting, and he left the entertainment business after the show concluded. In 1991, he died. Smaller but noteworthy roles were also played by Ellen Weston, who contributed some intelligence and beauty in her fleeting appearances, and Lynn Peters, who made an appearance as a guest star. These performers gave various programs more nuance and flair by portraying control scientists or chaos agents. They contributed to creating the peculiar universe for which Get Smart was renowned, even though they did not remain for the duration of the series. There have been spin-offs, reunion films, and even a modern reboot film in February 2008 since the original show's premiere. The magic that the original cast delivered to our screens, however, is unmatched by anything. Because of their unique relationship, every mission and every joke land was unforgettable. Some have died. While some are retiring quietly, their contributions to Get Smart have endured. Get Smart was ultimately more than a silly spy comedy. It was an exhibition of gifted actors who brightened our days with humor, warmth, and absurd pleasure. We got a great show from the 1965 cast. Watching those old episodes still makes me feel like I'm seeing old pals again. Even now, with the shoe phone and all, they continue to make us giggle. Adams playing multiple parts. Don Adams had already started developing his distinctive humorous style prior to Get Smart. He portrayed the naive hotel investigator Byron Glick on the Bill Dana series from 1963 to 1965 in the early 1960s. His famous demeanor, memorable lines like "Would you believe," and humorous rhythms from that part would subsequently be modified for his portrayal of Maxwell Smart. Adams had the lead role of Sergeant in The Partners, another sitcom, which aired in 1971. Lenny Crooks, a police detective who mirrored his Maxwell Smart character but was incompetent. John Doucette portrayed their frustrated supervisor, Captain Andrews, while Rupert Cross played his somewhat more capable companion, Detective George Robinson. Robert Carvelis played Freddie Butler, a man who frequently makes up confessions to crimes, in the episode. The series only ran for half a season, despite following a well-known humorous pattern. Throughout the years, Adams maintained his Get Smart persona in promotional appearances. In order to promote reruns of the show, Adams used his shoe phone to record station promos when Milwaukee's WCGV-TV debuted in 1980. Additionally, he appeared on The Love Boat as a guest on multiple occasions. In one comical scene, Adams' character refuses to see the ship's doctor, played by Bernie Kopel, who had played the antagonist Siegfried in Get Smart, despite being certain he had been shot. Using the catchphrase "Get Smart, Get Save Mart, Smart," Adams played Maxwell Clever again in a series of humorous local television advertisements for the electronics retailer Save Mart in New York in the early 1980s. He also used his well-known "Would you believe" line to infuse the same vigor into a series of White Castle commercials in 1992. When Adams portrayed the title character in the animated series Inspector Gadget in the 1980s, his unique voice attracted a new audience. A bumbling but well-meaning cyborg investigator, the character was very similar to Maxwell Smart. Adams made a brief appearance in the 1999 live-action movie based on this series, which starred Matthew Broderick. Although neither project was explicitly related to Get Smart, a spin-off cartoon, Gadget Boy, and Heather came next. Adams brought Maxwell Smart back to life in the middle of the 1980s for a run of advertisements for Buffalo, New York's Empire of America Federal Savings Bank. Adams was shown in the ads wearing traditional spy gear, including a trench coat and shoe phone, to promote their telephone banking service, SmartLine. Produced by Sherwin-Greenberg Productions, the advertisements featured a red Alpine look-alike that was similar of Max's original automobile from the program and were filmed on a Foggy Alley-style set. Adams starred as Maxwell Smart in a series of TV ads for Toyota New Zealand in the late 1980s which promoted the 1990 Toyota Starlet. Production transported the New Zealand automobile to the United States to film the advertisements because he had a severe dislike of flying. In the late 1990s, he also starred in long-distance dial-around service advertisements in Canada. Adams portrayed a harbor master in the 1987 movie Back to the Beach, who employed a number of Maxwell Smart's catchphrases, such as a sequence in which Frankie Avalon's character momentarily imitated Siegfried's voice. In a 1989 Kmart commercial, Adams used his shoe phone to tell the chief about the store's electronics, reinforcing the Maxwell Smart persona. In a clear reference to a well-known Get Smart running joke, Smart said, "Don't tell me you're a double agent," as a flawless replica of himself materialized. Adams additionally took part in nostalgic McDonald's advertisements that showcased celebrities from popular television series, such as Al Lewis, The Munsters, Bob Denver, Gilligan's Island, Barbara Billingsley, Leave It to Beaver, and Buddy Ebsen, The Beverly Hillbillies. Later on, he portrayed a supermarket manager in the Canadian sitcom Check It Out. Adams was able to jokingly return to the comedic approach that had made him famous by using several of his clever catchphrases, such as "I told you not to tell me that" and the classic insert sentence trick, in a retail context. Remember to like and subscribe for more videos if you liked this one.